Oh, I'm sorry. The question is, if I'm creating an informed consent, should I hire my malpractice lawyer or have a lawyer in the future that I can rely on? The simple answer is, number one, you want somebody capable and competent of helping you. That's number one. If you can have your malpractice attorney do it, and they can do it at no charge, great. I mean, I would always go that direction. On the other hand, if you say, my cousin is a real estate broker, and I know she can write this document for me, and she doesn't know what she's talking about, I don't think that's a good idea. So I think you can talk to your friends. They may have forms that they've had somebody else prepare that you can borrow from them. You don't have to always go out and hire lawyers and spend a lot of money. But on the other hand, I'd rather have you spend a lot of money, never a lot of money on that, but I'd rather have you spend money than do something that's dumb. I have a slide that I put on speeches, and I'm probably going to have it on Saturday, that says, legal advice, 5 cents. Good legal advice, $5,000. And, I think that you have to balance that kind of issue. You don't want to spend money needlessly. I'm not in favor of that. But on the other hand, don't go just to get it done and then have it be completely worthless.
Why don't you take one more question?
Okay. How much coverage do you suggest physicians carry? The question is, how much coverage should a physician carry? I think I think it's from a malpractice standpoint, I presume you're talking about. Is that correct? I really think there's a lot of different views on that. If you've got substantial assets and you're trying to protect them, what do you need to protect them? Do you need 3 million, 6 million of coverage? On the other hand, I know doctors who have said, I won't have any insurance coverage because they don't have a requirement in that state. Some states have a requirement. And all of the assets are on their spouse's name, and so they basically, there's not much to gain in a lawsuit. And the sad reality is if a plaintiff's lawyer knows that there is no insurance and there's no money, they don't go very far with the lawsuit. If there's a big insurance, then they fight and fight and fight for the big pot of money. So there's a good damned if you do and damned if you don't sort of thing. I think you have to make sure your assets are protected. That's one of the reasons you're working, so that your family is protected, and whatever you need to do that. But I know doctors who have none, and they're fine. I don't recommend that, but they're fine.
Okay, let's start with Dr. Biddle. So what we'll do is we'll go through, everybody's going to get a chance to come up and you can ask your questions to that doctor. Unfortunately, we don't have a better system. We're going to try like this and we'll repeat the question. So Dr. Biddle, hopefully you've written your questions down.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, that's good news.
So
I won't take that personally.
So Dr. Biddle talked about the history of chelation therapy. I know it was early in the day, and sources of exposure. Okay, so your memory will be jogged. Okay, over here.
I have a question that's sort of for, I guess, questionees, I guess. I'm from Canada and from a research institute, so perhaps it's a bit of a different context, but I do have a little bit of an issue when you're suggesting that people not use the same non-standard test, like not make a standard non-standard test, in that from a research point of view, you don't have data that you can move ahead with the same way. And and sort of related to that is the question of, and it's a legal thing too, if you are going to sort of move the area ahead, it's really necessary to collect data that's usable, that can be published, and so on. And it's best if that goes through an ethics review, which would provide, I would assume, some kind of legal backing as well as a scientific backing. So I'm wondering if you can sort of
I know that's not to me, but I'm holding the microphone, so I'm actually going to, because I experienced this because, yeah, so the question is about running a series of non-standard tests and repetitive pattern over different clients and having that be potentially questioned. And I can speak to that because I've actually faced that. If you're in an IRB, if you have an actual study in an IRB, you're pretty much bulletproof. if you're not in an IRB, the medical board will actually use that against you and say that you're doing unsupervised research. And they're very adamant against that. So don't look like you're doing research if you're not in an IRB, because they'll hold that against you, as it's a big crime to do unsupervised research.
So then it's a case study.
It's just a case study, but actually be very careful about trying to do research that's not supervised in an IRB. It's a red flag. Did you have? Who else?
All right, let's just open it up. Just you guys, whatever questions you have, don't worry about who's up here, and then just say who it's going to be, and they come up. So let's start right up here.
I just had a question for Dr. Biddle. You were talking about how fluoride potentiates lead absorption, and also mentioned that it was in the teas, that it's in the water, it's actually in the teas. Can you explain the relationship between fluoride and lead?
Well, I don't think it potentiates the absorption. I think it potentiates the toxicity in the body, just the same way that mercury does. So the question is, she was asking about, does fluoride potentiate lead absorption? And the answer is that it actually potentiates the toxicity. And is the fluoride coming from the water or from the tea itself? And it's from both. Tea actually concentrates fluoride from the environment.
What is the utility of a pre- and post-provocative urine test? Doesn't it double the cost of testing? I mean, if you do a provocative urine test and it's positive, why would you need to say, well, the pre-test is something and the post-test is something else?
So the necessity, the question is, what is the thinking behind doing both a pre and a post-provocative testing? Isn't it more expensive? So this test is available out of pocket for $60 for the entire test, so that would be a cost of $120 versus $60. It's a legal necessity for you as a physician to do a pre-provocative test. I believe this has actually come up in a legal situation. The physician doing a course of chelation therapy with a provocative test only. And the reason that you always want to do a pre-provoked urine and a post-provocation urine is that you want to differentiate between exposure that is historical versus exposure that's acute. Because the first rule in environmental medicine and in toxicology actually is remove the patient from the exposure. So it is your job as a physician to both identify that exposure if it's in the acute environment and also counsel the patient about being removed from the exposure, removing, especially if it's a child, removing the patient from the exposure. And there are actually some legal guidelines about removing children from lead exposures that are in the home. So